Every tyrant begins as a savior. The difference is only a matter of time and accounting. In 1989, amid the ashes of a collapsed regime, Viktor Drazik became a symbol of hope. A former economist with an engineer's precision and a poet's rhetoric, he promised to lead his Eastern European nation into the modern age. His campaign slogan, "Stability through strength." When he took office, inflation was devouring savings. Shops stood empty. People traded cigarettes like currency. Viktor's first act was radical privatization, turning state monopolies into public companies, selling them to investors to spark growth. At first, it worked. Factories reopened. The currency stabilized. Western media hailed him as the architect of renewal. He smiled modestly in interviews, insisting that wealth would trickle down once corruption is purged. But he didn't realize, or perhaps didn't care, that corruption has a way of changing its face to match whoever is in charge. Within 5 years, the miracle began to rot from within. The companies Viktor sold were quietly repurchased by friends, loyalists, generals, childhood companions who suddenly became billionaires. They called themselves the Circle. Officially, they were strategic investors. Unofficially, they were an empire inside the empire, controlling media, energy, and information. And Viktor, the economist who once preached transparency, began to rely on them to maintain his illusion of stability. When journalists questioned a suspicious energy contract, Viktor dismissed them as saboteurs of progress. When a whistleblower leaked evidence of bribes, he called it foreign propaganda. The Circle applauded. Parliament obeyed. But history has a cruel balance sheet. In 1997, a drought struck. Power plants failed. Citizens faced blackouts while the Circle's estates glowed like constellations. Riots erupted in the capital. Protesters carried signs reading, "You sold our future for light we cannot afford." That night, Viktor appeared on national television, his face pale under studio lights. "We will endure," he declared. "Progress demands sacrifice." He didn't mention that the state fund meant to rebuild the grid had vanished through offshore accounts he'd approved. It all unraveled when his finance minister, once his protege, defected, bringing a ledger. The document contained every secret payment, every offshore route, every coded transaction. Viktor read the headlines the next morning, "The Architect and the Shadow Empire." For the first time, the man who built his nation's trust realized he'd lost control of it. The Circle began fleeing, jets to Cyprus, bank wires to Zurich. He summoned his closest ally, the energy magnate who owed him everything. "Help me stabilize the market," Viktor pleaded. The man smiled faintly. "You taught me something, Viktor. Power doesn't belong to who starts the fire, but who owns the fuel." By nightfall, martial law was declared. By dawn, Viktor was gone. Some say he escaped on a diplomatic jet. Others claim he was arrested quietly and buried under a false name. His empire dissolved into private monopolies, ruled by the very oligarchs he'd created. The economy recovered, but the conscience of the country never did. Years later, a student documentary uncovered a box of his old speeches. In one draft, never delivered, Viktor had written in the margins, "Power is not wealth, it's permission. And every permission demands a confession." The line was underlined twice, as if he wanted to believe it. No one knows whether Viktor Drazik died a fugitive or lived quietly somewhere under another name. But his nation still bears his architecture, the skyscrapers of his ambition, the ruins of his ethics. Because corruption rarely begins with greed. It begins with a belief that control is the only way to protect what's good. And once you believe that, you stop noticing when you've become the thing you swore to destroy. The story of Viktor Drazik isn't about evil. It's about the arithmetic of power, how every decision to fix the system, without accountability, multiplies decay. Because in the end, the most dangerous corruption isn't in the ledger, it's in the heart that justifies it.